And before I take another break, your energy level. You feel that, or you know that you have more energy now than you did in the past when you were eating all the kind of foods and your health was not as good as it is now. Do you have a real energized, energy level?
I mean, your concept and at least my concept and definition of what I would even consider energy just totally changed because it went from stimulation. What most people think is energy is actually stimulation from poison. So the pus eating and all this stuff, when we go out and see all the football players and the basketball players and all this kind of stuff, yeah, they might look cool running around or whatever, but most of them are running on poisonous stimulant. You take that stimulant out of there and everything changes. So I did have to go through periods. Part of this process is sometimes you got to go through eliminations that can take you down, so, and then other times you can be running miles and miles and don't feel nothing.
We got a call coming in, and this is Talking Drum, and I do it this way. I call it Talking Drum Live. So state your name and where you're calling from.
This is Sister Muhammad again. I forgot one question I wanted to ask the brother.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, could you tell me what are your thoughts on black rice? And I've had that experience with avocados too. I couldn't digest it because the slime, and that's the same way with okra. So I've had to eliminate some stuff automatically. But could you tell me what the thoughts are on black rice as opposed to wheat rice? And thank you very much. I really appreciate all your information, brother. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you.
I mean, I'm not an advocate for any of the kind of rices, and you can kind of do the tests yourself to see that even the brown and the black rice, they still can be cooked down into that kind of gluey substance. They're still mucus forming. Can they be used on the transition? Yeah, I mean, you could use some of those things in the transition to various lengths of time, but as you cleanse yourself and you start to notice, like, okay, this really doesn't eliminate too well, and again, when sometimes some of those things are easier to eliminate when you start to eat them properly, where you combine them with the raw salads and that kind of stuff, and so it's not something that I really advocate, but different people could argue between, what's worse, the wheat. I know Brother Air and myself, we found that getting into the grains and I know it's kind of, it's sort of sacrilegious to a lot of people because they're really against the wheat products, but we had found that wheat, when eaten properly, eliminated fairly quickly until we got cleaner, and then you get to a point where it's like, okay, I can't eat this no more because it doesn't eliminate. Eric recommends really well cooked toast, so it's not just eating any kind of wheat or any kind of that kind of thing, but the reason that he recommends that on the transition is because you cook out the gluey property of it. So again, there's always a method to the system in terms of getting rid of that glue.
Well, the Sister Muhammad just called, and she raised a good question. But the one thing that she said, now I did say that I happen to like avocados, but I can see what you said, and that experiment with the apple and avocado, I already know. What the end result would be. But she mentioned okra. Now, okra, to me, ever since I was a child and even into adulthood, and I'm eating some okra, but okra to me is like a bunch of little children in an elementary school that had colds in the wintertime, and their noses were running, and you cut them off and you put them in a pot and you boil them and you ate them. That's what okra does for me. So what's your thoughts on okra?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it. That's one of those gray. There's a few things that are sort of gray area where you have to see, does it help you eliminate? Because each item you have to judge for yourself, how does this eliminate in my body? Because certain vegetables don't eliminate as well as in my body as maybe they do in Brother Ayers or yours. You know, with okra, I've never found that they eliminate well, that it really has a great transitional property or need. You know, I'd rather just have, like I said, some green peas or something like that. So that's kind of my thing with that. It's not something that I ever really recommend if it's something that somebody's already into. It's not the worst thing that you could be eating, but eventually you would want to transition off of it.
And just staying on that just for a moment, I know that I talked to a brother who was born on the continent of Africa, and he would take a fresh okra, cut it up, and he said you let it sleep overnight, so sit overnight in water in the refrigerator, and then when he brought it out, he just poured, he was saying it was like the nectar, he poured this slime, then he drunk it, and he said, and then he put some more water in it, and he said then eventually, you know, the next day or so he'll cook it. But I said, what does that do? He said it helps lubricate your intestinal walls, but it also lowers your blood sugar level. He said, but now if you drank it like that every day, I said I wouldn't hardly get it down one day. He said, but if you drink it every day, he said all of a sudden if it lowers your blood and you start feeling a little woozy, like you were kind of spacey, he said it can take your blood sugar level down too low. He said, so you have to reach a point that stop it. He said, but what okra does is curbs diabetes to some extent. You have any thoughts on that or any knowledge of that?
Well, you know, our approach to, you know, like the sugar metabolism problems, you know, I don't like using the those are cuss words to us, you know, the C word and the D word and these kind of things, because basically in our opinion, there is no such thing as disease. They tell you that you have something, and then there's an entire way that you're supposed to think about. Like they tell you have a C word, and then all of a sudden you want to brand yourself with that and wear that as a label. What we deal with is symptoms. So we say, well, what are you going through physiologically? If you eat some sugar and you feel like you want to pass out, or you get lightheaded all the time, or you got, you know, tell me the symptoms. Don't tell me what you have been diagnosed with in terms of, you know, like wearing this thing as a badge. So with that, there's a lot of people that have used the Mucusless diet to overcome, you know, so-called sugar metabolism issues, because it's based not in trying to regulate and all these concepts, at least not where we're coming from. It's based in you got to detoxify the system much deeper than maybe you think, because this isn't about like, well, let me do a 21-day cleanse or a master cleanse or some kind of let me fast for several days. Sometimes some of these more chronic issues you gotta deal with the healing system long term, you know, so you gotta invest yourself into the total lifestyle change. But if you do, then you can overcome this stuff, you know, totally naturally.